And it's COMP228, Java Programming. It's week 8, lesson 8, part 1. We're doing a broadcast. I want to talk a couple of things today. One is we kind of talked about last week, on the second part of the day, we talked about how I kind of showed you the solution set for your exam, right? We talked about that, what you could have done differently. And today, like I promised, I've come up with a bonus assignment for you guys to do. And again, bonus assignment means it's on top of, it's an optional assignment. You don't have to do it. Add into your final grade. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So here's what it looks like. It's called the rate practice. And like I talked about, some people have already seen this kind of thing before. I've done it in C#. Obviously, more people need it again. It's in Java, so it's going to be slightly different in Java than it would have been in C#. And again, it's just syntax, but a lot of times it's problem solving. So let's talk about this. So again, using Java and Eclipse or an IDE of your choice, and people like using IntelliJ or something else, right, and NetBeans, you will write 2 small programs to demonstrate your understanding of arrays and or array list structures. Okay. Anyways, don't worry. So write an app to simulate the rolling of 2 dice and display how many times each result was rolled. So the app should randomly roll the first die and then the second die, right? That's 2 marks. And then the sum of the 2 die values should then be calculated. So let's say, for example, I can get a value between 2 and 12. This is an array, a matrix of what it looks like for how many times a 2 can be rolled. Like if you notice, there's only one time a 2 can be rolled. You can roll a die with 1, a 1 to 6, and that's 1 out of 1 to 6, and 1. So there's only one chance that you'll get a 2 out of all these chances, right? Same thing with 12. 12 is very low in terms of probability, right? And then 3, there's 2 chances as an example. 4, there's 3 chances, and so is the same for 10. If you look, there's a mirror, and the most common number you can roll using 2 dice is 7, right? That's why they have like lucky game craps, right? That you can play at the casino and lose all your money, right? Anyways, not to say that I'm a casino game player. I don't do that, although I've used some of these examples in the past. But these are just probability things, right? So how would you, what do you make when you make this first die and second die? Why I'm asking you to do this? Because I want you to tally with some kind of structure, whether it's an array or whether it's an array list. This is the exercise here. I want you to tally how many times the sum of the 2 numbers are rolled to get a number. For example, I want you to roll these numbers 36,000 times, all right, in some kind of loop, all right? So you have to think about the proper loop to do it in. And what you get here is a distribution. So example, how many times, I want to know how many times was 2 rolled, right? How many times was 3 rolled? How many times was 4 rolled? And so on up to 12. So out of 36,000 times, you're going to have 7 being the most common one. So let's say 7 takes up the majority of the rolls. Let's say 18,000 times 7 was rolled, as an example. How do you figure that out? You have to use an array to tally, to keep track of. Or an array list structure is another way of doing that. So you got to figure out how to do that. Arrays, in this particular case, might be the easier method because array lists might be more challenging to do, right? But that is the way I'd like you to try and do this, okay? So, and now, also, you want to, it says here, use a one-dimensional array or an array list to tally the number of times each possible sum appears, okay? Display the results in list format, not like this, in list format from 2 to 12, as an example, right? And then to the console or using a GUI window. So whatever you want to do, like a JFrame. It's up to you how you want to do the output. I'll leave that to you in terms of how you present it. If you want to practice UI, put it out in a GUI window. If you don't care about that, you just want to get the marks, which I'm sure some of you do, the easier way to do it is in the console application. All right, here's the second piece, which is a lot more difficult. An airline reservation system. Part 2. All right, so a small airline has just purchased a computer for its new automated reservation system. You have been asked to develop the new system. You're to write an app, console or UI, to assign seats on each flight of the airline's only plane. You got one plane, right? So think about display the following alternatives in a console-based menu or appropriate UI component. 1 for first class, 2 for economy, and 3 for exit. So you have 1, 2, or 3. What kind of seat do you want? You must use a switch statement and a while loop. Okay, so this is a menu, which means the menu will keep on looping. It'll keep on asking you to assign a seat. So they'll ask you, hey, assign a seat. Which one do you want, first class or economy? Now you only have a limited amount of seats. You only have first class seats are in sections 1 to 5. So how would you think about putting this together in an array? And then your economy seats are in seats 6 to 10. So think about elements. You can store things in elements. Now this one would be much better suited towards an array list if you're doing an array list, but you can do it with an array as well. And we'll talk about the ways to do that in a second. Okay, I say use a one-dimensional array of type bool, so Boolean array, true or false, or an alternate array list structure to represent the seating chart of the plane. So if I have 10 seats in the plane, and if I have an array of 0 to 9, 0 to, as an example, to 4 might represent seats from a first class, and anything 5 and above is economy, as an example. How can I tell if the seat is taken? Well, if the seat has false in it, that means it's not available. Or you can do it the other way around. You can say if everything is false, starting off as a default, and if the seat is taken, it'll be true, right? And that's why this is saying here. So we initialize our array, or the elements array, to false to indicate that all seats are empty, or for an array list structure, allocate the appropriate number of elements for first class seats and economy seats, which might be the better way to do it, because for an array list, there's no index necessarily. It's just a bunch of elements that are grouped inside a collection, right? So if I have 5 economy seats and I'm looking for economy seats, but there's only 4 left, and if I have one, I just remove the economy seat availability. So you might create an availability array list, and basically you choose, you pluck out those seats from the availability list until there's no more, right? And when there's no more, then you can offer economy. If they don't want economy, then they have to wait for the next plane, right? Vice versa, if there's all the economy seats are taken, then you can ask them to upgrade to first class. Most people don't do that in real life, by the way, because first class is like triple the money, right? But let's just say they want to upgrade, they can do that. And when there's no more seats on the plane, you have to say, hey, you have to wait till the next flight. That's what this assignment's all about. Here's what it says is, so as each seat is assigned, set the corresponding element of the array to true to indicate that the seat is no longer available. For an array list structure, remove the seat from the list, because that way you can't access it if it's not there, right? So how do you assign the seat? And there's some questions around how to do this. You have to think about the proper way of doing it. This is an individual assignment. I would really ask you not to work with anybody else on this one. I want you to puzzle it out, because you know what? I'm going to put more array stuff on your tests from now on. Every single test you're going to get, every assignment you're going to get arrays. And if you're not good at it, not because I want to punish you, because you need to know this as developers, right? I can't avoid the arrays and array list stuff, right? So, and it's nothing to do, this last exam has nothing to do with your understanding of interfaces and polymorphism or anything like that. It was all, you guys didn't understand how to create an algorithm with an array or array list. That's what it was all about. So please do this on your own, figure it out, puzzle it out, practice. This is a good practice, and it's a bonus. This is an optional assignment that will add on to your final mark. It's not going to take away. If you decide not to do this assignment, that's up to you. You're not going to lose any marks, but you won't gain any either, right? So, okay, so let's do the last piece. Your app should never assign a seat that has already been assigned. That's number one. That's how you're going to be judged. And when the economy section is full, your app should ask the person somehow if it's acceptable to be placed in the first class section, and vice versa. If yes, make the appropriate seat assignment. If no, display the message, next flight leaves in 3 hours. So that's really it. That's your assignment number 3, which is a bonus assignment. It's called array practice, right? And I've done this exact assignment in C#, but obviously it wasn't enough. So I got to do it again, right? Any questions around this? This is due, again, next week Friday by midnight for you to get the bonus marks. I will not accept late assignments because, as an example, this is just pure bonus, right? So how about, does anyone not want to do this one? I don't know. I don't see how you'd not want to do this one. This is kind of a good one to do. You will be tempted, I'll tell you right now, to work on every assignment with your friends, right? Yes. Oh yeah, not 23rd. Yeah. Yay! I don't know what happened there. I must have missed the thing. So I'll have to update the document a couple times now. Yeah, it's just say November 13th, not November 23rd. actually on the, here, let's just do that now. Now that you maybe do this, I'll just do it as we speak. I'll just print it to PDF. Anyways, what the, assignment 3, that's just silliness. But it should say the same thing on your, in your Dropbox there. It should say that, here's just like, let's just close this off for a second. And I'll just take care of this now in eCentennial just because you're setting it. Just so that way we're good. We're good with all this kind of stuff. So the reason why I'm, I think it's that. God, I'm losing my mind today. Oh, wow, I'm really losing my mind today. I know they've changed the passwords lately. That's why it's, so I got to think about these things. Yay. Okay. Anyways, so again, you might be tempted to work with somebody else on this because, you know, assignments in general, when you take in a programming assignment, they're tough. This one is like you have to puzzle it out a little bit. But if you always work with somebody else on assignments, you're gonna really be bad at exams, right? And I can't take away the exam. Like this is your chance to show that you know the stuff on your own, right? So please try and do this on your own, like as much as possible. You know, try and make it work out so that way, you know, you have a chance to learn from it. This is what this practice stuff is all about, right? And I know some people were like, yeah, Tom, all I care about is the marks. I get it, right? It's the classic conundrum. You know, you want to do well. I want to have some really good marks, but you know, at the same time, you don't want to come away not knowing stuff, right? So that's the challenge. The challenge is that, you know, you might come away missing some piece of knowledge. As a developer, we use these array and arrayless structures and collections in general to create more complex algorithms. They're building blocks at the very, you know, the very basics. So if you don't know how to do these things, then it's almost like you're handicapping yourself in some ways, right? So when I ask you to do stuff, and this, by the way, this applies to things we do on the gaming side for our gaming students. Like if you're going to build a complex, tomorrow I'm going to ask you guys, or maybe to later on today, we're going to build a procedurally generated level, right? With the, you know, with in 3D, right? So in order for us to do that, you're going to guess what you're going to use. You're going to use arrays, right? So if you don't know how to do that, and it's going to bite you somewhere, it's going to come at you, whether it's arrays or array lists or some kind of structure, you know, it's going to bug you. So please don't take this as something that's you shouldn't do. It's definitely something that you need to do, and try and do it on your own. Okay. Any questions around assignment number 3? Again, I will try and give out assignment number 4 tonight as well, which we'll be doing in a couple weeks, and it'll probably be a UI assignment just on UI, because we've been talking about UI for a couple weeks. This will be the next one we're going to be doing. And I'm going to be, for the rest of the day today, I'm going to be talking about UI. I want to kind of try and wrap up as much of it as we can so we can move on to other more interesting topics. Okay, so I'm going to spin up my, my Eclipse here. So I would ask you to do the same. So I'm pulling up Eclipse Mars. And I'm on page, what looks like 26 of the PowerPoint. I'm going to keep firing through it, like very, very slowly until we get to the end. Let's look at a couple things I've got. Remember last day I also talked about the midterm, both different methods for array, the array method and the array list method that I kind of showed you. So we're going to continue to do that kind of show and tell here. Let's take a look at a new project. So I'm going to open up a new project here, new Java project. And I'm opening up new projects not because we can't work with the old one, but only because it's great practice for you guys to do it over and over again so that you're comfortable doing it. So we're going to just call this this one COMP228, and we're going to call this lesson 8. So another GUI lesson, right? Okay, and we're going to finish. We're going to do the same kind of stuff that we normally do, which is I'm going to add this one into some kind of Git repository, right? Couple ways to do this. Again, I could add it through the command line. I'm just going to try and do it all through Eclipse this time around, just to show you a different way of doing it. So again, there's not much in here right now, but I'm going to go into my source, and I'm going to create a new class that we're going to call the program class, or the driver class for this particular thing. So I'll call it program, and I'm going to ask for a public static void main and click finish. All right, so there's our program class, and I'm just going to do some annotation here. which is, I'm just going to call it the driver class. So this is the driver class, right? And I'm also, again, I'm just putting some comments here for you guys. And underneath this, I'm also going to put on the public static void main. This is the main method, main static method, right? That we have with all of our driver classes, pretty much. They run without a kind of being instantiated, right? Okay, cool. We got this. And now I want to save this on GitHub because, you know, that's the kind of guy that I am. I want to always work with GitHub. When we are developing, we always want to have our partner in crime, which is our revision, you know, system. Something to use, whether it's GitHub, Bitbucket, you can use SVN. There's also Perforce. There's tons and tons of different kinds of revision control systems out there. I recommend you partner with someone, right? And it's up to you what you want to do. When I mean partner with someone, I mean choose a revision control system. Visual Studio Online is another one. Even put it on darn Dropbox or OneDrive. Do something to back up your stuff so that way you don't lose your things. I don't want to hear, you know, like I told you before, my computer broke, I lost my hard drive, and I don't have my, you know, and crying to me that you don't have your programs and you lost your assignments. Please don't do that. Okay, so let's go to GitHub. And then, because by the way, in the real world and at work, you'll just get fired, right? I mean, if you have a, you know, if you lose your work, that's just not good. So let's go here. And I want to create a new repository for Centennial College that we're going to call COMP228, and it's going to be called Lesson 8. Now, again, I'm just making these repositories. This is going to be a public repository. I'm not going to add a README right now. I'm going to create my repository here, and it's going to give me the credentials that I need, right, which is the URI, right, the Universal Resource Identifier, which is this right here, to allow me to connect it with my Eclipse, right? So I don't need to do any of this right now. If I wanted to command line, I could follow these steps, right? And that would be the command line steps that I need right here in your command prompt or in your terminal if you're using a Mac or Linux machine. You could do these commands, and this would be perfectly fine. All right, so let's take a look at how to do that. So I'm going to go back to Eclipse, and again, just to show you, I'm going to go to my project here, right-click, and go to Team, and go to Share Project, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to create a repository in the parent folder? And I'm going to say, absolutely not, because that would ruin everything if I did the parent folder. I want it just in this folder. So I want to create, I can also choose an existing repository, which I do not want to do. I want to have my own repository for each folder. So I'm going to click this Create button as a shortcut, and when I do that, I'm going to choose Where, which it's got to be in the right location, right? So I'm going to choose, courses. I'm going to go across here to COMP228, go down to my workspace, and then choose my files today, which is Lesson 8. It's got to be in here because I want all the files for Lesson 8. I'm going to press Open, right? This is going to give me my path. I'm going to click Finish. It's going to say, meh, you can't do that because the path already exists. That's okay. I'm just going to press Cancel here because it's done what I wanted it to do. It's created this Git repository with no head, which means I don't have a commit. I've never done a commit. Let's do a commit. Right-click. I'm going to go down to Team. I'm going to go to Commit. And it's going to ask me to do a commit. I'm going to include all the files I want to add in, including the gitignore file for my Java, which gitignore files, by the way, they ignore certain types of files, so it doesn't load everything up on GitHub that you don't need. And put some kind of commit message, which is usually first commit or initial commit. Those are the standards. Let's make it initial commit. Again, a commit message is just a label for the snapshot that I'm getting for my files. This is the state of my files right now. I'm getting a snapshot of these files. And then later on, I can always revert if I have a problem. Let's commit and push. It's going to bring up another window because I haven't set up my remote. And it's going to ask me for this URI. Now, this is where I kind of, punch it in. I can paste it in, and there it is. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. Let's go back to online to grab it from here, from my clipboard. Go back to Eclipse, and then paste it in. And when I do, it knows exactly what to put in. It knows because I've already set up Eclipse for my username and password. It's stored in this secure store, so I'm good. I never have to put that stuff in, all right? And if I click Next, it's going to ask me to continue. I can keep clicking Next and accept all the defaults and click Finish, and then all of a sudden, clickety-clack, if things went right, you're going to have everything up on Eclipse, on GitHub, and let me take a look. There it is. So you've got everything, all your files up on GitHub. It's really that simple. And for people who want to do a pull, I want to add a README file. I showed you this before too, because this is a very common practice as well. I can add something like a description of my repository, which is, you know, repo for, you know, Java programming. And you can put everything. I did it in different ways. Java, so it's like COMP228 at Centennial lesson 8, right? So that's what it is. I want to add this little funny README, and sometimes we put instructions in the README file here of how to use our little a repository or a little API that we've written. Okay, as an example, in this particular case, we're just, you know, calling it what it is. But I want to sync it up with local, and I've done this a bunch of times. But let's do it again. I'm going to go into my lesson 8. I'm going to go right-click. I'm going to go to Team, and I'm going to go to Pull. Pull. And what Pull does is it fetches or grabs everything that's online, because I know I'm behind now, and it's going to pull it back down. It shows me that I'm pulling my master branch, and I have this new head where it's going to move to create readme.md. That's what it's going to do. And I'm going to press OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to grab the README file, which is right here now. If I double-click on the README file, I have access to this markdown file, this .md file here in Eclipse. Yay! Stuff you've seen before a number of times. But you know what? There's no end of practice for this kind of stuff. I'm going to keep showing you it so that way you're very comfortable using GitHub. You've seen GitHub. You're sick of GitHub, right? So that way, you know, when you go to other classes and if you say, hey, how come that professor's not using GitHub? You should be using GitHub. That's not good. That's, you know, revision control practices. I'd like you to point it out. If I forget one time to use GitHub, you let me know, right? Because that means I've slipped. I'm slipping, right? I can't do that, right? You know, we've got, it's part of our process. Think about us as a company, right? You guys are all working for me. And, you know, part of our process, there's going to be, in reality, there's going to be some automation. I'm going to probably have some automation processes in the back end, especially testing automation to, you know, test your programs. But definitely one of the pieces that are in there from a process perspective is some kind of revision control. Most likely it's going to be something like GitHub. Probably it's going to be in a private repository somewhere, right? That I'm going to get you to put some stuff up. In this case, you can create 5 private repositories like we talked about before if you download the Git package from DreamSpark. We talked about this, so I'll pull it up one more time for people who've asked me in the past with email, hey, Tom, how do you do this thing? You go to dreamspark.com under the software catalog, which is under students, under the software catalog. There's going to be this additional thing called this GitHub for Education, which you can totally download. And once you sign up, when you get your pack, you get a free SSL certificate. You get a free domain from Namecheap. You get 5 free repositories with GitHub, and it's all part of your free student pack from GitHub Education. Totally worth getting, all right? And it's free. So why wouldn't you get it? And the other one, like I told you guys before in other classes, is Microsoft Azure, right? That's a great little package to get if you want to host your websites or your applications, mobile or otherwise, online. Microsoft Azure is a free student resource that you can certainly sign up for and kind of be part of. Okay, so I'll leave that with you. Okay, and again, I don't work for Microsoft, but you know, some of the stuff that they got is pretty cool. Well, with the GitHub pack, you also get a free subscription for 9 months to DigitalOcean, which is kind of a really cool, an additional cloud service provider, which is something you may want to look into if you're on the website. Okay. So being the life of a developer is always learning, right? It's always picking up something new. So, you know, there's always this thing of like, what did you learn today? So this is the stuff we're going to do today. We're going to learn some new stuff around UI. Let's take a look. Back to the PowerPoint presentation, we talked about some simple things last time. JLabel, again, is an outlet for us, right? I want to pop some stuff up in a JLabel, right, for my JFrame. How do I do it? Now, again, there's a couple ways of doing this thing, and I showed you guys how to do it with the UI, this you know, window builder that's part of Eclipse, right? Now, there's some really good things they do here at Window Builder, and there's some really bad things they do. But it's something that a lot of people use for a quick and dirty window. I want a really quick window. I'm going to add in a JFrame as an example, right? That's the kind of way of doing it. So let's do that again. So we're going to add another JFrame in here. I might ask you to do that, for example. Here's assignment 3. You want to build a UI for assignment 3 instead of doing it with console for whatever reason. As practice, let's do it this way. So I'm going to click JFrame. It's going to ask me for this new class because that's what I'm building. I'm building a new class, And the JFrame also has associated additional files in the background that you don't see, right? This by using Window Builder. All right, so again, I'm going to call this thing, you know, maybe something like example frame, example window. Let's call it example window this time. So a window, right? And it's part of the superclass Java Swing JFrame, right? So it's not the Java object class. It's the Java Swing JFrame class, right? And press and click finish. Okay, when I do that, I get a bunch of stuff, right? And I don't like any of it, right? Because I don't want to run my JFrame inside of a static class, as an example, that's run out of my application. I don't want that. I want to get rid of this whole main method, because I already have a main method in my driver class. This is my driver class. So the simple way to do it, of course, is to grab pretty much all of this stuff except for this runnable piece. We'll talk about what this runnable is later, right? Anyway, by the way, just by the by, anyone knows what a runnable is? You can hover over it and it tells you what it is. It's an interface, and again, what it does is it creates almost like an additional thread, if you will, right? And it's an anonymous thread that runs. And if you notice, it says this event queue invoke later, which means when I call my example window, it's invoke later. That's why we have to do it this way. It's because it's inside of a static method, right? It's going to run first. And if this was my only application, and this was, I'm kind of using this application to drive the program on its own without a driver class, just like right from in here. Neat, but I don't need it. I'm going to take my try catch, because I like to look at my try catch block, especially when I try and open up a window. Remember, try catch is the way we do exception handling. So I'm just going to, grab this thing and I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to go back into my program.java, and inside my main method, I'm just going to tab in there just to make it look nice and paste. And if it doesn't look nice, I can always reformat it, right? There it is. I'm going to save that. So example window, notice frame is equal to a new example window, right? An example window is my custom class that extends JFrame, right? So I'm using inheritance, so it is a JFrame, but it's my own custom window or JFrame class that I'm using. I'm going to get rid of all this now because I don't need it, because this main method I don't need. It's useless, right? So bang, that's gone. So now all I have is my example window constructor function. This is what this thing is, constructor method, if you will. So here's my constructor method. So I'm just going to call it that. So the constructor method. And this is only one. You can make multiple constructor methods, remember, and you can make them overload, just like you would overload any other method by giving it a different method signature, right? Different constructors. This one's only going to have one. It's the empty constructor, right? And there's a couple things here. One is that it says it's set default close operation, which is cool, to exit on close, right? We set our bounds or default bounds for the window as 100, 100, 450, and 300. Let's change that to 300. So kind of a square window. Making a new JPanel. I don't want a JPanel. We're going to go with something else. But for now, let's leave it as is. Let's leave everything as is, by the way, because we're going to talk about different structures today. Okay, so this is cool, but you know what? I don't want all this stuff to be in my constructor method. I want this to be in some kind of other method, like an initialize method where we set up our window for the first time without putting any other kind of stuff in there, not any other labels or anything else, right? So I can call this initialize or window setup or whatever I want to call it. Let's call it initialize, and I'm going to pull it out by right-clicking. I'm highlighted everything. I'm right-clicking. And I'm going to go to source, and under the bottom here where it says, there should be, I don't know if it's source or if it's refactor, maybe refactor, sorry. Refactor extract method, refactor extract method. And when I do that, it's going to ask me for my method name, which I'm going to call initialize. I'm also going to make it a private method because, hey, by the by, why does anyone have to reinitialize my window? So I'm going to call this underscore initialize, right? Initialize. It's going to return void because I'm not going to really return anything by it. And I'm going to select OK. Good. There we go. So what it does is it goes this. We're going to put the this keyword in there because I like to use this. This initialize, right? I'm going to call the initialize the private initialize method. And let's, by the way, since you're making private methods, might as well put some comments. So private methods. right? That's what they are here. We're just separating our code around by using comments. Again, you can create your own methodology for that, and your company that you'll work with will definitely have some methodologies for how to create comments. Let's go in here, and I'm going to also say that this is my example window class, which again inherits from JFrame. It's my own custom class. In C# as an analogy, right, or an analog, if you will, we have the same kind of stuff in C#. You have a form class in C#, and you extend the form class by creating your own form and renaming it. So, example, I might have a a calculator form or something, and my form might be called calculator form in C#, right? And then it extends, or if you will, with the colon, and that's different syntax there, it extends the form class. The form class is part of the Windows form. If you ever did Windows forms before, right? That's what it does. So, example, did I spell this properly? Example window. That's right, example window class. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now, if you notice here, I've got some imports that there's an underline that says, hey, this isn't being used, right? Kind of stuff, so I can take it out. If I hover over it, it says remove unused import, or I can just choose organize imports. If I choose organize imports, it gets rid of it. Notice how, again, as it opens up, you can see that there's the imports are all bundled together. It's good from an optimization perspective to do this. All right, so I've got this. If I click on the design view now on the bottom, if my design complies with Window Builder, notice how I said if, right? You'll be able to pull up kind of a preview of what my window is going to look like here in Window Builder, right? That's what it looks like. And now I want to talk about J labels, right? That's what I'm going to kind of put there. So I want to kind of drag and drop my J label into there, right? So let's drag a J label. Don't worry about the J panel there for a second. So how do I do that? I select my J label first, left click onto it. Now that it's kind of highlighted or selected, if I go here, you notice I get an option to drag and drop anywhere in these panes. This is the default kind of layout for my J panel, right? Using border layout. And if I click on this north piece, this is where my first label will appear. And let's just call this we're going to call this a hello label. All right, that's what this thing is going to be called, right? So how do I don't want to type it here necessarily. I want to kind of put it down in here, right? So my variable is called label, or new LBL new label. I don't want that. I want it to be called, kind of, I know it's a J label, but I want to call it a hello label. Something called hello label. Here we go. Just renaming it here. Constraint is north. That's where it's being put. The background, the color of the background is where it is. Is it enabled or not? My font size, I can choose my font size for it if I want to. Let's not for now. And my text in the label is going to be new label. Let's leave it as new label for now, because I want you to programmatically change what it says in the label to something else. All right, so let's talk about how to do that, right? So how do I change what's written in the label? Hint, hint, this is a great way to put things together for your assignment 3, right? By firing off all the output for part 1, which is that tally here inside your UI. It takes 2 seconds. You set up some labels, and then an example would be, some labels to describe what you're doing, and then some other labels down here, and then you have a bunch of labels that are inside your UI. Okay, so I want to change this UI label. Let's save this thing and go back to source, right? How do I programmatically change my hello label, right? And now this is something to think about. My J label right now is inside my initialize method, and that's not what I want. Because even though my initialize method sets up my window, I probably want to take my J label and put it in something else, like GUI builder, some kind of GUI builder method, or create GUI or something else that makes sense, right? Create my UI components or add UI components or something like that. I also want to make this add UI components a private method. So let's do that. So I'm going to extract this J label, and I'm going to extract it with my refactor, and then we're just going to say extract method. I'm going to call this thing, it's going to be a private method. Then I'm going to say something like, it's going to be called like UI builder or add UI components or something like that. Let's just call it add UI components. But that's what I want to do for my JFrame, right? I want to make it a private function and press OK. If you notice, it's going to add my add UI components in my initialize method. I don't want it there. I want it inside my constructor function. So I'm going to take this whole thing right here, this method call, and cut it and put it up here underneath my constructor method. So I've initialized first. It's kind of more clear here, right? I initialize, and then I add my UI components. My UI components is going to have all my UI components going to add into my JFrame. Okay, here's another thing. I want to be able to modify my hello label. In this particular case, can I modify my hello label outside of my class? Take a look. Why? Why can't I modify my hello label? Yeah. Well, it's in a private method, number one, right? It's a local variable that I'm using to assign to my hello label, which is of type JLabel. Although I'm initializing it with this new label, this hello label is just a local object that's inside this code block up here, right? So this code block right here is where the JLabel component lives and dies, right? I need to expose that somehow, and the right way to do that is to create some kind of instance reference to this thing, right? So how do I do that? Well, up here where it says private variables, by the way, and I still have some work to do because content pane should be underscore content pane in my best practices or conventions that I use. Again, some other professors might say, you don't need to use the this keyword. You don't need to use the underscore. Why would you do that? I'm asking you to do that for best practices, okay? So let's reformat or refactor this one because I want to make it so that I want to kind of go to refactor, rename, and I want to kind of change this to my content pane with an underscore. I'm also going to add in references to my content pane with the this keyword. So let's do that now, just to fix this up. Before we add this reference to my JLabel here. Done this a couple times, guys, before, so you've seen this method. So if you see me knocking marks off your exams or your assignments because you're not using the this keyword, you know why, right? I'm asking you to do it. Okay, so clickety-clack, we've got a reference to content pane, which is a private instance variable. Let's mention that here. So private instance instance variables, objects, whatever you want to call them up here. That's what they are. I want to make some getters and setters, though, for this, right? So if I create this JLabel as a private instance object, I want to create a getter or a setter for this thing, right? Somehow of accessing this object outside of my code. Let's see how I can do this with effect. So let's go into private, and we'll write this thing as JLabel, right? Is of type, the name is going to be called hello label, right? Here's my hello label. I'm not going to instantiate it here, right? All I'm doing here is I'm declaring it. Now, because it's private, guess what? It has to have an underscore, and I might as well change the name of the variable with a lowercase h, right? Hello label, just for my format. Well, this means that down here, instead of just doing one of these, I'm going to change this to this dot underscore hello label, which is going to be a reference to this private component up here. Still can't access it from outside of my class, though, right? Same thing here. I might as well just make sure that this is correct. This dot underscore hello label, right? That's going to be added into my border layout in my content pane. Okay, cool. So this is cool. I'm okay with that. So notice how my content pane is a private container. That's what this JPanel is. This is a container, JPanel container, right? And this is just a label that I'm using. Okay, how do I access? Any ideas? How would I access this thing if I want to access the properties of my JLabel outside of my class? How would I do this? I need to set up a getter and setter. Let's do that. Now the getter and setter we're going to see is going to be messed up, right? But let's just bring it forth anyway. Let's see what happens, right? So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to source. I'm going to go to generate getters and setters. I can do this anytime I want, as many times as I want. I don't care about getters and setters for my content pane yet. Let's leave that out. And I want to kind of open this up. I don't necessarily need both of my my getter and my setter, right? I mean, getting the value of my hello label, setting the value of my hello label, that's something else. So I want to make a setter. Now, how often do we just do a write-only getter and setter? Almost never. It's usually a read-only or both, one of the two, right? I probably don't need the getter right now, but I'm going to set it up anyway. Best practices, guys. All right. Okay, here's the access modifier. Should it be protected? Definitely not. It should be public, right? Because otherwise I won't be able to access it, right? Here's another one. If I make this final, that's bad, right? Because final means it's static. It's never going to change, right? I don't want that. I want to make it so that it's not final, right? And I'm going to press OK. Now it tells me where I want this. After my hello label, that's where it says. After when my hello label is declared, right? And it says sort by fields in getter and setter pairs. Well, it doesn't matter. Allow setters for final fields, remove final modifier and fields if necessary. It says that there is an option. There's some really quick and dirty ways of doing these things, right? Let's press OK. Cool. I've got my getters and setters for my hello label. I got some problems, right? By the way, does anyone know why you have these comments like this up here? Anybody? Tyler, you know? Yes, documentation. But if you see these comments that come up, huh? They're annotations. And what happens is if you actually look at these methods outside of my class, whatever I write here, again, is at return, the hello label, it'll actually show you those comments, right, as a preview outside of this class. It'll actually give you a little bit of a hint, code hinting, right? That's what this is doing, right? Okay, so I'm saying let's not do that for now because I'm going to go into this another day. So let's just make this. These are my public, properties. That's what they are. Remember, public properties, private instance variables, right? That's the kind of default. We've learned that in C#. We're doing that here as well in Java. There's no difference. We kind of do the same things. Let's get rid of this too. So these are my getters. This is my. It's a type J label. That's what I'm getting. It's returning my hello label. What is this really returning? It's an object, right? Is it a value type or a reference type? Reference type. So I'm actually returning the reference to the object, which means I could probably make this thing, if I really wanted to, this hello label, I could probably make it public. It'd be the same thing. Because I'm actually creating a reference. Remember, a reference is like, there's two objects. If you look at a variable, right? And the difference between a reference and a value, right? I can make a reference to any variable I want, right? The reference is like the address of the variable, right? It's in C++ or in C, it's the pointer to the variable in the memory address, right? Location, right? And by value, I don't care about where it is. I care about what's inside of the variable. What's inside? Each variable is a container, just like this object. This object is of a custom data type called JLabel. We've defined here, right? Or they've defined here in Java, JavaX Swing, right? So this custom object, JLabel, because it's not a simple type, right? And it's a complex type, it's a reference type. Because the reference type, the only thing I can return back outside of my class is a reference to my hello label itself, which is just the pointer that points at the address, right? So if I modify anything outside of my class, I actually modify the object itself. Make sense? All right, so let's do that. So first of all, let's indicate that this is this.hello label, because just for our purposes. And I really don't like the naming convention, and I probably could change the template, but I don't want to. Instead of get hello label like this, I definitely like the get, so we indicate what it is. I want to say get hello label. Same thing with set hello label. Set hello label is going to be set hello label like this. If you notice that what I'm going to put in there, right, is, so if I want to set it, what am I going to be sending back to it? A reference to a new JLabel that I'm going to basically be assigning. Take a look at this. So I'm going to change the reference. What I'm actually doing here in Java is pointing my objects. Let's say, for example, I'm pointing it at Tyler today. And now, you know what? I assign this new object over here of Fahim. So I'm going to point it to Fahim. All I'm doing is changing the pointer location. I'm updating the pointer so it looks at you instead of him. I'm not really assigning one to the other. When I do this assignment statement down here, I'm taking this new label that I'm creating, which is a new memory location with its own address in memory somewhere, and all I'm saying is, hey, you know what? The label, the variable hello label is now going to be pointing to this new address, not to the old object that I had before. Leave that object in memory. Discard it. Who cares about it? Okay, so I don't want this. I want to call this hello label, right? And just so we know what it's clear. So hello label is the object. It's got to be of type JLabel that I put in there. If I'm going to create a new label, so I want to set up a new label for whatever reason. Okay. Chances are I'm not going to use this setter, right? But I'm putting it in there because I'm going to show you how you do getters and setters. Sorry, what were you saying? The other one will be discarded when we do when it goes through and the program does garbage collection. It'll be discarded, right? If you ever do that, right? It'll actually be destroyed. As soon as you do this, then once we do a pointer reassignment in Java, it'll destroy the other object, right? Now, again, this is destructive pointing, right? So when I move from one to the other, I'm actually destructively killing the thing out of memory as opposed to cleaning it up in a nice way. I'm not being nice about it. I'm actually like slapping the variable around. I'm going, hey, wake up. Now I'm not going to point you over here. I'm pointing over here. And the program doesn't like it too much when we do that kind of stuff, right? They like it so that way we deallocate and reallocate. That's why C++, a lower level language, does deallocate and reallocate. I'm an alloc and dealloc, right? I'm allocating memory and deallocating memory. I'm not doing that here. I'm just doing it by my reassignment. My reassignment call is actually doing that at a low level basis. It's reassigning and reallocating memory. Okay, so this is, I've done this, and now I want to assign, now that I have this, it's exposed because it's public, I should be able to see it here in my driver class. Let's go back to my driver class, and I want to update my label. All right, how do I do this? So first, I set up my window. It's visible. I need to do that, right? And inside once I do this, and once I call my constructor method, my constructor function is going to create call my private initialize method, which is here, probably here. And then it's going to call my add UI components method that I've defined, right? So if I go back, that's what this call is going to do here. And it's going to assign frame, this variable name. It's going to make it of type example window. I'm creating a new type, a new data type called example window. So every time I want to access my new data type or whatever, my new object, I just access it with the frame keyword, right? Frame.setVisible. Okay, cool. How do I access the label that I want to modify? I want to modify my label so it says, goodbye, right, or hello. Right now it says a label. Let's try it. So I'm going to say, first of all, frame dot, and if you notice, if I go get, here are the different get options I have. Get frame, I can do that. That's kind of built in. I've got my get, some other window, and there's my get window. Where's my getter? How come I don't have that? Right? Frame dot get. Don't know, right? It's my frame. I've set up my private, here's my get hello label. How come it's not exposed? Anybody? Oh, this is it right here, right? Here's my public. Here's my example window right here, right? Here's my private public example window. Here's my public set hello label, and here's my public JLabel type. Right, that's what it's going to return. It's going to return this get hello label, right, into my own label, right? That's what I can do. So how come I can't access it when I go back here? And outside of the try, doesn't matter. Try catch is irrelevant. Although, here's something that I have done, right? When I write it outside my try catch block, because my very good call, my example window is being created, my frame is being created here, it's not available here, right? Because it's going to live and die in these two, and within these braces, right? It's a good call. But really, I don't have to use try catch, right? I'm using it because it's good practice, right? But anything that's between these two braces, this is where the program lives and dies, right? So this is where my call to example window, lives and dies here, right? So if you don't do it in here in my try catch block, because I'm inside these two braces, right? I can't access my frame from out here. I can only access it from in here. So this is where I have to put it. So frame dots. Now let's see what I get. If I go get, lots of methods. I go get, bounds. That's interesting for a rectangle. I can, and if I start typing get, my hello label, which is what I want, there it is. There's my hello label. And if you notice, I get no code hinting. It just tells me it's a type J label and it's example window is what it says, right? Of type example window. Okay, so here's my hello label. And what I want to do is I don't want to return anything. I want to modify it, right? So I'm going to put the dot. I'm using the dot modification. I can chain all of my commands just like I normally do in any C influence language. I can use the dot accessor method to further chain my commands. So I'm going to say I want to set the text maybe. So let's set the text. I'm just guessing here. Set the text of my label, right, to whatever the text I want, and maybe we're gonna call this thing, hello world, right? Hello world. Because we really haven't done a hello world yet with programmatically anyway. And let's see if this works, right? So we've set the window visible to true, and then later on we're setting our text to hello world. Okay, let's run this thing. We haven't even tested this thing yet. I'm gonna just run it and see what happens. Woohoo! Hello world. Anyone not understand what I just did? Let's go back. Right? So remember, I'm using the reference. This is the local reference, an anonymous reference. I want you to think of it this way: anonymous reference to my get hello label, which is this hello label right here inside my class. I'm using my getter. This is my getter right here. This is my getter from my hello label to get a reference to this private variable right here. That's what I'm getting, a reference. It's going to be the address of the private variable. And then it's like I'm saying frame dot underscore hello label. It's like I'm saying that. Set this property, the text value. I'm using the setter of the J label, because remember, J label has its own setters, getters, and setters, right? One of them is set text. I'm going to set the text of this J label, right, to hello world. I'm getting a reference. I'm getting a reference to the label, and then I'm setting the text of the label to another value. Okay, this is where students get lost, okay? Because they're like, we're getting it, and then we're setting it, and I don't understand, right? Getting a reference, I'll say it again, getting a reference to the, of the new object we've created called frame, which is an object of type example window. The example window is the one we made, right? Frame is just an object. It's an instance of example window, right? Then what I'm doing here is I'm saying, set the window to visibility to true. I'm using the setter method of the visibility property to true, right? That's what I'm doing. And then I'm saying, use my custom getter method for the hello label and set its properties to hello world. Yeah. We are. We're actually doing it right here, new label, right? See where it says new label here? I'm just showing you how you override it. So it originally stated new label. If I go back into design view, if it's compatible, right? Here's my design view. Let's see if it's compatible or if it changes stuff. Because be warned that when I go into design view using Windows Builder, right? In here in Eclipse, and same thing with IntelliJ and other things, it monkeys with my code, eh? Be careful. It doesn't leave your code alone when I move into this view, right? Okay, let's take a look. Hello label, my variable's still set, right? I have some stuff. I have my text as new label, and this is my preview, new label. But when I run my code, right, it says hello world, right? Let's go back into my source code and see if it's monkeyed with anything. We're pretty good right now. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty confident that we're going to be okay, right? Any questions around this? Right? All I've done is assigned, kind of value to my label. The value that I've assigned, again, we can set it in the constructor. What if I just do this? I take away my new label, and I just leave it blank like this. Can I do that? Is that allowed? If I go back to my design view, right, you can see that there's no label in here. The reason why I'd probably want to put some kind of placeholder text in there, right? And again, I can put in placeholder text or hello label or whatever, is because sometimes we want to be able to gauge what our design is going to look like. If I'm using a drag and drop environment, might as well put in some kind of placeholder text to see where it's going to be. okay? All right, cool. Let's go back to the PowerPoint, and then we'll take a short break. So I got my J label. I can use the set text method. That's what I just demonstrated, right? I can use the get text method, right, by using my getter. I can set an icon and get an icon if I wanted to get those two things. Probably not going to do these things with our J label. Here's one: set horizontal text position, right, and set vertical text position, and specify the text position in the label, right? Not on the form, not in the layout. That's totally different. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let's go back. So if I go back to design view, notice that we have this label that takes up the whole size, the whole width of my window. If I was to change my horizontal or vertical alignment for this, it wouldn't move my label. It would move the text that's inside of my label. The label's a container. The text would move around inside here, right? That's all it would do. Okay, here's something. What about if can I resize this label container? Because right now it's like, it's way over here. Can I do, resize the size of my label, right? And the answer is not in this format, not in this layout. In this layout, right, you have no control, the way it's coded right now, of how to change the size of my label. Notice underneath here that I don't have that. Notice that my constraint is north because I'm using it inside of a content pane, which is inside of the content pane is actually, if you notice, it's actually a J panel. That's what the content pane is, right? My border is an empty border, right? And my foreground is a specific color, right? And so on. Okay, let's go back out. So I can use my set horizontal text position and set vertical text position to change the where my text is going to appear, all right, in my label. We did set default close operation with my JFrame exit on close. There's other options too as well. Like for example, you can instead of exit on close, you can minimize on close and so on. We don't want to go too much in there. Let's keep going down this line here. One thing to note, this is something new we haven't talked about. UIs are event driven, and there's an event model for creating any kind of button clicks. There's two things you need to learn when you do event, and the basic stuff for UIs. Eh? One is labels. And some kind of text entry, like a text box. Those two. Those three things, actually. And the third thing is a button. You need to know those three. If you don't know how to do a button, a text control, and some kind of label, you're in trouble, right? Like you need to know those basic things, right? So it talks about here you creating an event handler. The event handling system in Java is a little bit more complex than we've seen in other code, right? You would think, it would be nice to think that you can make a nice little event handler callback function, you're good to go, right? It's not so simple in Java, all right? All right, let's take a look at text fields, JText fields, and JPassword fields. What's the difference? What do you think the difference is between a JText field and a JPassword field? Anybody? Password field does not show the characters. It kind of obfuscates the characters in these little dots, right? So that way you can't see them. You can't see what it is, right? JText field extends the JText component package in the Swing text, right? It says, which provides many features common to Swing's text-based components. And the JPassword field also extends the JText field, right? So JPassword field is actually a child class or a subclass of the JText field class. So if you know JText field, you know JPassword, all right? Okay, let's go and create a JText field. And let's put a first name in there, okay? So we're going to put a first name. So we're going to go back to Eclipse. And we're going to create a text, kind of like enter your first name. Maybe another label that says first name, and then the text, the label, the text field next to it. All right, let's use our drag and drop interface because we love doing that kind of stuff, right? So we're going to say we need another J label, right? So let's take a look at let's kill our layouts, kill our containers for a second. Go to J label, and I want to put it. But notice how it doesn't allow me to put it here. How come? It doesn't allow me to put it up here in north, right? I can put it here. Right, in my west, right? So there's my west, there's my label. I can put my new thing. This is an interesting layout, right? I can't put it right near there, though. I can't add it to my north, right? Even if I wanted to, I couldn't put it in north, right? Looks like it's center. And if it says vertical alignment is center, I want to choose my vertical alignment as top, because that's where I want to put it, so at the top next to the other one, right? I'll just change my vertical alignment here. This is all on the properties panel right here, right? Without me having to code anything yet. Okay, cool. I don't have anything to label. There's a label for property too. I haven't created that yet. My new label has to have its own name. So I'm going to call this the name label. So again, I'm gonna make it so it's a private variable that's accessible in my class. I know that, so I'm going to kind of create the convention that I want. So underscore name label. It's my name label, right? One thing I'm going to change. Constraints is west. That's where it's going to be housed, right? And my text in the label is going to actually be a fixed text that I'm going to put in, like enter name. There we go. Enter name. So whatever the name is, enter name, right? And then if I click away, it's going to update this thing. So it says enter name, right? Yay. Now what about if I put this, instead of west, I clicked it to north? Could it work? Well, what it does, it actually wipes away my other one. So I don't want that. That's why you can't have, in this particular layout, you can't have more than one object like that's layered in there. You have to create another content pane. So let's leave it in west for now, just to understand layouts. We're going to go back to border layout later on. Okay, cool. And if I don't want to have a border layout, if I go back to my content pane and I want to switch from border layout, to a different kind of layout, right? I could certainly do that. I can choose my different class here, right? So instead of my border layout class, I could choose a flow layout or something else, right? By replacing it, I could change my my layout type, no problem, if I wanted to. Notice right now that the class is Java AWT border layout. I could choose a different kind of layout, flow layout, box layout. We should try and do that, try and figure out how it looks. Let's do this flow layout and see what happens, right? Oh, here's new label, and then there's enter name. Why? Because remember what flow layout does, it stacks everything in order. So I start doing one object, the next object, the next object. When I run out of room, it goes to the next line. That's what flow layout does. Okay, let's change from flow layout, let's change it to a box layout. See what that does. Whoa, it's way down here, right? And what this does, well, box layout is very similar to flow layout in that it arranges things in order. If I go back to my entry, and if I add another option, like for example, I want to add in a J text box, right? Which is a text field here, and I want to I can see that I can put it before or after. It just labels it here in this box, right? And if I was actually going to unclick this thing, so let's just press escape to unclick. Notice that my box takes up the whole size of my screen, right? Could I kind of change the size of my box? No, right? Okay, let's do another layout. Let's do a grid layout, which is a very popular layout these days, right? So here's my grid layout. Yay, okay, I've got my grid, and now let's try and add another text field in here. So notice how I have a bit of a grid, right? But my grid right now, it shows, this is neat, 2 columns, right? 0 rows. This is a better layout. I want to add a grid that has 2 columns and 2 rows, right? There we go. And here's one row, here's the other row. There's 2 rows, and then there's 2 columns, right? I can do column 1 and column 2, no problem, right? So 2 columns, 2 rows with a different H gap, a gap between the rows. Right now the gap is 0. I can add in a columnar gap if I want. I can also make more rows. So instead of 2 rows, let's make it 10 rows. See how that works. 10 rows. There we go. So now they're a little bit closer together, and you see a lot more rows here. There's nothing that's being taken up, but I could do that. I also want to put it in another column, right? So I want to take my JText field and put it over here. So this is where I'm going to put it, and I want it to be up there. I don't want it to be down here, right? This is where my JText field is. I want this to be. I'm choosing my JText field. I want this to be in its own column as opposed to the column it's in right now, right? So how can I drag it into its own column here by putting it somewhere else? Well, it drags it up and down the rows, right? Notice how I can just drag it up and down here in my view, right? But I can't drag it into its own column. So let's go back to my content pane and choose, instead of 2 columns, let's choose 3 columns, see what happens. Oh, killed the rows. Let's go 3 columns and you know what? 3 rows. See what happens there. Okay, where's my columns again, man? I don't understand this box, this grid layout here. Go back over here. It says columns 10, columns 3. Oh, this is how many columns this thing takes, right? So I only want a 3-column view for this one. Right, that's how this goes here, and then if I pull it over here, it doesn't work. Same thing with this one. If I click on my my text box for my new label, and I see my text box there, it's massive, right? Look how big they are. So I'm just showing you different layouts as a different option, right? Because you don't have to use the standard option layouts that comes with my content pane, right? So 3 by 3 with a V gap of horizontal gap of 1. I can put in that too. There's my horizontal gap. And I can put a V gap of 1. Notice how it spreads things out a little bit, right? But there's no extra, even though I have 3 columns in my constructor and 3 rows, right? I can't control where this one goes. It says how many columns does it take into effect? What's my background? What's my font? My foreground? Can't pull it in there. Even if I try, all it's going to do is going to pull it down. If I can pull it over here, it goes up. I can pull it down here, it goes down. So I can either choose a columnar or row layout, right? That's what it looks like to me. So let's go back into my content pane, and then if you notice, that's the grid layout. Let's talk about there's a card layout, there's a grid bag layout, right? Grid bag layout. There's a J goodies form layout, and there's other ones. Okay, so for now, because I'm just showing you what it does as an example, let's go back to this old school border layout that it kind of comes out. Oh, there's also absolute layout. I forgot to tell you that one. What's good about absolute layout? What's really good about it?
You said exactly what
I can put it exactly where I want. I can specify X and Y coordinates. What's the downside of absolute layout? I got to do it for every little object on the screen, right? A lot of times, relative layout is where let's try absolute layout and see what it does. So absolute layout, there we go. I've got my J label here, and now look what I can do with my J label. I can control in absolute layout. This is much easier for students, by the way. I can control how wide my label is. This is interesting. I have actually coordinates, and I actually can see. Let me make this a little bit smaller. There's much more control. You might think. It's much more control here, but you'll be fooled into thinking that this is the right way to do it, even though it looks nice for now. Let's do it like this for now, okay? So I'm going to kind of use absolute layout. Nice and easy. Here's my enter name, and let's put this over here. But you'll see that this will be a disadvantage later on because you need to create a whole constraint system to go along with this for it to work right. Okay, good. So there we go. New label, right? And then this is enter name. So I've done a bunch of different layouts as an example, but let's use the absolute layout for now just to make it so that it's easy for you guys to learn. Okay, here's my enter name, and here's my, I'm going to kind of make this a little smaller. Here's my, my text box as well, right? Here's my J text box. My text field should be my name text fields. So I'll call this underscore name text field. That's what it's going to be called. My name label is the name label. That's what it is, right? Notice how I also have bounds now, 5, 41, 96, 23. That actually comes down with the absolute layout, right? It tells me my X and Y coordinates, my bounds, and my width and my height, 96 by 23. If I want to match them up with this label, for example, I want this one to be 96 by 23, I can just change the value, 96. 96 by 23, right? And this is at 5 and 6. And this one is at 5 and 41, right? Lower down. And by the way, how do I know where the position is on my screen? The top left corner of my window up here is the 0, 0 point. Okay, so 0, 0 starts here. It goes increases in X across this axis and increases in Y across this axis until you get to the size of your window on the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, just like any other layout. So absolute layout is cool because you can set things up easily. Not cool when it comes to being if you want to change the size of your window, it'll stay the exact same size, right? Which is bad, right? And we may want to limit the window size changing as well. Let's go back to our source code and see how it's monkeyed with our code. It's going to monkey with our code a lot now, right? Ooh, man. Oh, it's killing me, right? Let's take a look, right? We got some private variables here. Name text field came in as private. That's cool, right? What about my my name label? right? Where's my name label? I got my content pane. Let's just change this UI component. This dot content pane is set layout null. That's interesting. Because that's the absolute layout. And then this hello label is equal to new J label. I'm doing that good, right? And then I also set my bounds. Here's my set bounds. So this dot underscore hello label set bounds to 5, 6, 96, 23. This is the X and Y coordinates and the width and the height. That's what it does, right? Which is very, very easily understandable. And here's my name text field. And the name text field. So this dot name text field is a new text field. Same thing. Bounds. And if it's smart enough to know that I want to definitely put something in there, I want to add it to the content pane. And it says I also want to, my name text field should have 3 columns. Let's get rid of that. So you don't need that. That's only for a columnar layout, which we don't have. So I'm killing that. And then here's my set vertical alignment to top, swing constants top for my name label. I don't want that either. Who cares about that? Makes no sense to me. But I definitely notice that this is a J label of type underscore name label. I want this name label to be up there. So I'm going to take this whole reference here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go up to the top. And I'm going to make it a private field that's going to be another label underneath my hello label. So I'm going to kind of go private and paste, right, which is called name label. There it is. And then underneath here, down the bottom, I'm going to say this dot name label set bounds and this dot content pane add. And then instead of defining it right here with another J label, I'm going to say this dot name label is equal to new J label here, which is enter name. And then you know what? I don't want it to appear here. I want it to appear in order. So I'm going to grab this whole reference and put it on top of my text field because I want my labels and my stuff to appear in order. There we go. So here's my labels, right? And I can actually annotate them a little bit. Right, so say something like this, hello label, right? This is my name label, right? This is my name text field, right? This is where all these things are, right? So you see what these components, and this is basically saying use absolute layout, We're gonna change this layout up later on. You're gonna see how this is gonna monkey with our code again, right? But as you see, we're pretty organized here, right? Okay, cool. So I've got my text field and everything else. And you know what? I think it's let's check to see what this does, and then we'll take a short break. I'll upload this stuff to GitHub so you can catch up, and we'll get to the next piece. All right? So let's check this out and see how it works. So far we've only set the value of my hello world, right, as an example. And let's press play to see what this looks like now. Yay! So I've got my hello world, and here's my text box, and if I enter my name, I can do whatever I want there, but it's not going to do anything right now because I have no input method. There is no, I don't have any kind of event listener set up to handle any kind of text input. I have no event listener to handle any kind of button press or anything like that right now. All it does is it accepts a value. But that's all. What I'd like it to do, there's 2 ways we can do this. As I type my name, I want this, instead of hello world, to say hello and whatever my name is. Now, I can't do that as I type without some kind of event listener where I'm listening for keystrokes, right? So every time I click a keystroke, it changes what I'm writing up here, right? That's a more complex thing. I could also press submit, some kind of submit button or update, an update button that updates my hello world, right? I could do that as well. But that's the subject of the next topic, which I'm going to move on to. So for now, let's take a short break. And in the break, I'll update GitHub.